Antoine Augustin Cournot was a French philosopher and mathematician. He was born on the 28th of August 1801 in Gray, France, and died on the 31st of March 1877 in Paris. Cournot mostly spent his life in academia and managed to earn himself an impressive 2 doctoral degrees and contributed to the fields of economics, astronomy, mathematics, philosophy, and law. Now, Cournot is hard to place definitively in a specific school of economic thinking, mostly because he wasn't necessarily a career economist. His field of speciality was, of course, mathematics. But given that he was born roughly 30 years after the publication of Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, we can broadly put him within the classical period of economic thinking. Now, Cournot is most remembered within the contemporary field of econometrics. Now, of course, his background as a mathematician gave him a specific set of reasoning and ontology which he brought to solving economic problems. And as such, he's widely seen as one of the first people to apply mathematical formulas, symbols, functions, and probability to economic analysis. He was also apparently the first to draw supply and demand curves, predating the person that they're traditionally attributed to, that is Alfred Marshall, by about 30 years. Now, Cournot's most well-known theory is known as Cournot competition. He theorized quite extensively about monopolies, duopolies, and oligopolies, and many of these theories are still considered as particularly relevant today. Now, the theory of Cournot competition describes how firms behave in a situation when they produce a homogeneous product, yet they compete with one another without any cooperation, and there is a relatively stable number of firms who produce that product. Now, I encourage you to do some further research into Cournot competition because his thinking around this really proves how he brought his training in mathematics to the School of Economics. Because the theory of Cournot competition involves a very long and scary-looking set of mathematical calculations, which I definitely am in no way qualified to explain. Nevertheless, Cournot does reach a couple of conclusions from his theorizing. One of the most important is that in a state of Cournot competition, firms are ultimately incentivized to form a cartel, after which they can essentially act as a monopoly and set prices as they wish. And of course, we can broadly see this type of progression unfolding in the way that a very well-known modern-day cartel was formed, and that is OPEC. Cournot also tells us that in a duopoly, prices are normally lower than a monopoly, but not as low as they would be in a state of perfect competition. And furthermore, that in a duopoly, resources and production are allocated more efficiently than what they would be in a monopoly, but still not as efficiently as in a state of perfect competition. Now, many see Cournot as a shifting point in economics towards a greater application of mathematics and quantitative analysis to the field. These are obviously things which we take for granted today, but this was not necessarily the case during the classical period. Interestingly though, Cournot himself believed that economics does not necessarily require the strict numeric precision that mathematical analysis does, and furthermore, that mathematics can't necessarily be applied to every area of thought within economics. Now, this is obviously something which is somewhat challenged in our contemporary economic thinking. In my mind, at least, Cournot's influence is roughly similar to that of David Ricardo, who offers us the Ricardian vice. Now, Cournot was perhaps a little bit more mathematically rigorous than Ricardo, but essentially both of them give us the tradition of using models, numbers, mathematics, and statistics to postulate theories about what is happening in the